Welcome back to The Op. On today's episode, we will be discussing David Fincher and Not Moving the Frame, prepping before your shoot, being the Ricardos, Gone Girl, and of course, that age-old debate, monitor or eyepiece. Just a little bit of business before we start. There may be a curse word here or there in this episode, so please listen responsibly. Make sure to check out our website, theop.io, especially the breakdown where operators talk about everything that goes into the making of a shot, and read the musings for discussions about everything from quick tips to larger concepts behind operating. I may or may not take a couple of breaks during this episode, but I promise you none of them will be longer than 22 seconds. Finally, if you are enjoying the podcast, please follow us, like us, talk about us, and share us with your friends. So grab a beverage, sit back, and enjoy the op. Thanks for listening.
Lock it up, nice and quiet, and let's roll.
Victor 30 Echo, take 2.
Hey, Margaret. Hey, Mark.
And camera set.
And action!
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to The Op, the podcast where we talk about operating and the art of visual storytelling. I'm Dave Kamaitis, your host, and we are here again in Panavision Woodland Hills, they have so graciously allowed me to use their theater, so it sounds better, so I'm very excited about that. We have a great guest here today, Peter Rosenfeld, an A-camera Steadicam operator who has done more than 80 feature films, including, but not limited to, Spider-Man No Way Home, seemingly all of the Ant-Man movies on some level, Chicago, Gone Girl, American Sniper, The Social Network, The Notebook, the list goes on and on. Let me see if I got all this right. In 2011, he was nominated for the SOC Camera Operator of the Year Award for Social Network. In 2012, he was nominated for Cowboys vs. Aliens. And in 2015, he was nominated for both Into the Storm and Gone Girl. He's worked for directors such as, but not limited to, Oliver Stone, Clint Eastwood, Nancy Meyers, Catherine Bigelow, Sam Raimi, David Fincher. And as earlier in his career as a news cameraman and documentary cameraman, he covered the massacre of students in Beijing's Tiananmen Square and sent to Iraq to cover the Gulf War, and he filmed the collapse of the Berlin Wall. He's done a little bit of everything, and I'm really excited to have him here. Peter, thank you for being here today.
Thank you for inviting me. Boy, it does sound good in here. I can understand why you want to use this place.
Yeah, it's so much better than my daughter's bedroom.
Even my own voice sounds good in here.
Exactly.
Anyway, thank you for having me.
Yeah. So Peter, tell me your story. How'd you get here? Not how'd you get to Panavision, but how'd you get?
You mean the career story?
Tell me the career story.
How much time have you got?
Yeah, a couple hours. Go for it.
No, I'm going to condense it all.
I was born
I started as a camera assistant. I'm Canadian. I started in Montreal, Canada, as a trainee, and then a second assistant, and then things were busy because it was driven by tax breaks. Mm-hmm. It was driven, by labor tax credits, something we all became very familiar with later on. And then I discovered that those things can change. And one year the Canadian government took them away, and the industry collapsed. So I bought a film camera, a CP16.
Oh my gosh! Wow,
16 millimeter
when
film
was this?
camera.
Like 1980s?
Oh yeah, it would have been in there.
All right.
Yep.
And
I started just shooting newsreel. I started shooting anything I could.
Yeah.
And one thing led to another. Eventually, I found my way in the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation and became a cameraman for them. Eventually became part of their documentary unit. And then they opened up some overseas bureaus, a foreign bureau in Moscow. We had never had representation there. It was just like a radio reporter. But they got visas back in 1988. And they offered me the job of working overseas, and that started a whole other career arc because I went to Moscow for 2 years.
Wow. How old were you at that point?
Let's see. I would have been 28 or something like that.
And did you speak Russian before you went?
No. I learned it there. But the thing is, I didn't want to be one of those people that go to these foreign countries and come out of there after several years without speaking the language, because then you only get so far in terms of your life.
You mean like an American?
Kind of, yes. Sadly.
Yeah. Let's just say
so I had a language tutor there. Tatiana was her name. Every I think twice a week or 3 times a week, 8 o'clock in the morning, bang, bang, bang on my door of my apartment. Peter, come, time for Russian language. I open the door and it's like, oh, Tatiana, we didn't finish until 2 o'clock in the morning last night. It's okay. Did you do your studies? Oh, God. So we would go in the kitchen and so I had
That's great.
I learned Russian. I mean, my vocabulary was never really that perfect, but I could get on with what I needed to.
Sure.
Eating, working, dating, those are the things. That's the vocabulary
those are the big
you need.
three right there,
The big three, yeah.
yeah.
So I was in Russia for a while. I was there for the rise of Gorbachev and Boris Yeltsin and all that kind of thing. I really hated living there, but that's mostly due because of the life that you have there is very difficult. You know, it's hard to get things. It was difficult to move around. The conditions were pretty horrible. We flew all the time from one end of I've been to every single republic or former republic. I've been from Vladivostok to Lithuania.
Amazing.
From Siberia to Azerbaijan.
Was it interesting, at least, even if it wasn't
It was
enjoyable?
really interesting for the journalists because it was the biggest story in the world. The breakup of the Soviet Union was a big deal.
Yeah.
For me, as the cameraman, it was like the beeper would go off and they'd say, you're going to Baku in Azerbaijan tomorrow. And I go, great. What time is the statue of Lenin coming down? Because I'd like to have breakfast before that happens. Can you find out? And it was really, I got to be so jaded because how many times do you have to see the Lenin statue get pushed over?
Okay.
So that was kind of like the Russia thing. And then when that was done, I guess they kind of liked working with me. So they offered me the China Bureau. And I went to China just in time for the crackdown in 1989.
Wow.
And the massacre in Tiananmen Square, which is a whole different thing.
Yeah.
And then I ended up staying in China for, well, I guess it was 2 years of contract work for the CBC, which was a joint BBC-CBC thing. That was each contract 2 years. So I was there for 4 years for them. And then I stayed on as a Steadicam operator because I bought my first Steadicam while I lived there.
Oh, wow.
Knowing that I wanted to get out of news and current affairs, it started getting a little too dangerous. I started having a couple of
Did you buy it in China or did you buy it from here? And
I bought it here.
Oh, okay.
I took the training here,
Gotcha.
but then I was still under contract to, so that was on my holiday. So I went back to China, and then I remember we were filming on the set of a movie in China called Farewell My Concubine, and the cameraman. His name is Gu Changwei. Oh, I can't believe I still remember all that stuff.
So you were doing a news story.
We were doing a news story.
Yeah.
We were working for the documentary unit, doing a documentary for a British program about this film.
About the film. Okay, gotcha. So was this your first time on a quote unquote film like set?
No, because previously I'd worked as an assistant. I'd worked as a camera assistant.
Okay, sorry.
So I knew the protocol and stuff. But we were just doing a documentary, and I was sitting beside Gu Changwei, and just to make conversation in my limited Chinese, he spoke no English at the time. And I said, I actually have a Steadicam, and he grabbed my arm and he went, "You have a Steadicam?" I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "Where is it?" "Well, it's in my apartment." "What apartment?" "My apartment here in Beijing." "You have a Steadicam in your apartment in Beijing?" Anyway, one thing led to another. When I finished my contract, he reached out to me, and I started working on some of his movies.
Were there just no people with Steadicams?
I was the one.
That was it. Wow.
If you wanted Steadicam in Asia, there's one number to call.
That's amazing. Wow.
And in fact, I trained the guy who kind of replaced me when I left.
Great.
So I did like 3 movies back to back. But I like to say that often Steadicam operators start with, music videos or commercials. They ease into it. My first day as a paid Steadicam operator where I was on salary, it was a night scene, a crane step off with 200 extras carrying torches through this village. And take one, I step off the crane and, rookie mistake, my knee hits the bottom of the sled. Boing, everything goes Dutched. And I go, "I'm sorry, guys." And they go, "No problem." Back to ones and 200 people. And it's not like they had Larry McConkie to call. All they had was me. So
don't upset the Steadicam guy.
Yeah, just whatever you want, Peter. And
that's incredible.
And then so the learning curve was really steep and was really interesting. Yeah. It was kind of lonely sometimes because I was the only English-speaking person on a crew of 90 or so film people. So it was kind of. Yeah, some parts of it were tough.
So did you have an interpreter with you?
No, I had. This was kind of at the back end of the whole China experience because I'd already been there for 4 years. So, and my language skills in Chinese were better than they were in Russian.
Oh, okay. So you could get by. You just could.
I could get by. Yeah, I could talk to my crew. The problem, of course, in China is that they all have different dialects depending on where they're from.
Sure.
And even if they're speaking Mandarin, which was the dialect that I could speak, the accent that they would use and when speaking Mandarin would often throw me.
Oh, wow.
So, and I'm thinking like, well, I'm hearing bits of Mandarin, but it's not making any sense. So I would have to turn to someone who goes, I know why you're not understanding it.
Oh, wow. I had no idea.
Yeah. The thing is, you can rehearse the questions, but you can't rehearse the answers. That's the thing about learning languages. But I did okay, and I did fine. It was exhausting at times to always be thinking in another language while you're working.
Yeah.
But yeah. So that was China, and then after I finished a few movies there, I came back, to this country and to Canada, and then to here, and started working as a camera operator and a B camera operator, doing Steadicam, doing day calls on Steadicam, then eventually started working the A camera, and that's the story.
That's a great story. Wow. So let me just ask you, because we're going to talk about feature films and whatnot, but documentary-wise, are there things from when you were doing documentaries and news that translate to the storytelling devices, I guess, or things that you know about in film?
Are you saying if there's anything that I dragged over from my documentary days?
There must be some, but I'm wondering what that is.
Oh, there's tons. And a lot of it is stuff you don't even really think about too much, but certainly there are more scenes. Some scenes lend themselves to that kind of skills.
Yeah.
Others don't. I'm thinking now of a movie we talked about just in your prep. You asked me about it, Enter the Storm.
Yeah.
That was a tornado movie, mostly handheld, with a lot of action and a lot of stuff happening all off the shoulder. So yeah, a lot of those skills just kind of like come flowing back.
They're just built in. You don't even know that you're using them.
Yeah, I mean, it's easier than doing it for real because I know that if I whip to the right, I know that there's a car that's going to flip over there.
Sure.
And if I whip to the left, then there's going to be an actor who's going to enter the frame, and there's going to be something building that's going to collapse in the background. So it's kind of rehearsed in some way, but just the kind of like the idea that you're just composing on the go, framing on the go, picking your focal lengths rapidly, thinking of the edit, which you didn't really have to do on Into the Storm, but a lot of that stuff pulled over from documentary work.
I haven't done a lot of documentary, but I've really enjoyed the documentary work that I've done. But the thing that was the biggest thing for me was I was in Haiti 3 weeks after the big earthquake in 2010. I was there for 2 weeks, being part of a documentary that was already going on for a while, and they had gotten the okay to come because it was about partners in health, and you sort of couldn't not tell this. It's a big, long story. But one of the things that I found that was interesting was I'd be on the story, whatever the story was, but I'd constantly sort of be looking around to see if I'm missing something else and instantly trying to judge what that was. So does that part of it translate over to your sort of spidey senses of what else
particularly
is going
with
on,
unrehearsed
next?
action.
Yeah.
When you're doing something that's somewhat unrehearsed, then definitely the spider sense, as you call it, of what's happening. Like, okay, so I'm on this, but I think that might be interesting over there, so I'm going to wait till this happens, and then I'm going to swing over and I'm going to get that.
Yep.
But I think that in general, there are lots of skills that transfer over, but you have a lot of help in our world. As an A-camera operator, you have dolly grips that say, "Hey, look over there to your right. Guess what's happening?" So you have a lot of help like that when you're which you didn't really enjoy as a one-man band or two-man band.
We talked about this before. You pretty much solely work as an A-camera operator.
Yes, pretty much. Yeah.
Now, what do you think is the difference between a good A-camera operator and a great A-camera operator?
Well, it's a different question. It's a difficult question to ask because really your role is defined by what the director and the DP expect of you. So some directors want to be able to talk to the operator themselves. They want to be able to talk about their idea for coverage and staging directly with the operator. Some work through the DP, and that's the way the DP likes it. So the answer is complicated because it depends on the personalities involved, whether you've worked with them before, and what their expectations are of you.
Yeah.
I think a great camera operator sees outside of the frame, sees the area around the frame, understands coverage, understands cutting, understands organizing the crew and involving people so they feel happy and organized, so that you have their back, you support your team, and that they support you. So I think to define what makes a great camera operator and you know this, David, is so many different skills, some of which are obvious, like you need to be a good camera operator, you need to have some sense of framing, you need to have some sense of how to move the camera, when to move the camera, how to work with the dolly grip to make all that happen seamlessly. All that stuff is important. And then there are other elements that go in there too, like, management skills and diplomacy and working with other camera operators and making sure that everyone feels like they're involved, but they're still all pointing in the same direction, where we all have our eye on the ball for what the end result has to be. Yeah. So it's a different confluence of many, many different skills, but it isn't always obvious what they are at the time, and they're different on every movie, which is actually the best thing and the worst thing about our job. Because on some movies, you're like on all the time, you're basically doing, a lot of the blocking and working with the creative people to figure out how to cover the scene, and then you come home every night and you're just exhausted because your brain hasn't stopped working for 15 hours. And then other movies, you're just expected to be there doing the camera operating and not really involved in shot construction and anything like that. And that's easy for a while, and then it becomes like, oh well, be nice to be more involved in this. So it's different on every movie, and I think the answer, I hope I'm giving you a good one, is that it's hard to predict what that is, and what they're going to want from you.
Yeah,
but I think
that's perfectly fair and a great answer, actually, because I always ask the question, and really there is no answer. Some people have different ideas and whatever, but I don't think there's any pat answer for it. But you brought up something that's interesting to me, which is there are those shows, which I personally prefer, where I'm heavily involved. I'm like a big cog in the machine, and the director's asking for input on this and storytelling and working with actors and whatever. I enjoy that. But then there are the jobs where you're just the guy who frames it up and does the move and whatever. And as you said, that's cool for a couple weeks maybe, and then you start to get maybe a little antsy about it. How do you have a mental game that you play, or do you try to fill that mental energy with something else, or you just sort of go, well, I'll get through this, it'll be over, and I'll move on?
I think a good answer to that question would just maybe be a story with David Fincher, because David Fincher is a director who has a very strong visual sense, as we all know. He's very specific on what he's looking for. And the first movie I did with him was The Social Network, and I knew that it was going to be. He tends to fire a lot of camera operators, and I figured I was texting my wife from Boston, thinking I don't know if I'm going to last, because anyway, don't plan on anything. But I do remember there was a point in the making of The Social Network where Fincher sets the shot. He's very specific. My role is very well defined. And I remember looking at a shot somewhere in week 2 or week 3 and going, oh man, we could do better than this. And I got up and I took a deep breath and I walked over to Fincher, who was sitting on his chair reading something. And I said, David, can I interrupt you for a second? And he looked up and I said, listen, this shot sucks. What I should do is raise the table on quarter apples. I can raise the camera a little bit. We can raise everything. I could put on I'll go to a 40 from a 35, and I'll see right out that window, and I'll have all of Harvard in the background. And he raised his hand almost like a pope. He raised his hand to shut me up because I was going on and on about what
making your case.
Yeah, and he goes, and later on I began to understand that that's his way of saying, shut up. Go do it.
You've made your case. You don't
made the case. Yeah,
you're wasting my time.
Yeah. Asked and answered was the thing he kept telling me. So he'd raise his hand, asked and answered, go do it, and I would do it. And then from that moment on, it was a different kind of relationship, because then he kind of understood that I'm on his team, and I'm only going to say something when I know it could be better. When it's a gray area where it's either or, I let him do his thing, because he's David Fincher, for God's sakes. Yeah. But when there's a point like that where you're setting up a shot and you realize this could be better by doing this, this, and this, I'd pitch it to him. So I think your question is, What was your question?
I don't remember. I'm just fascinated by this David Fincher story.
But I think your question is
how do you feel that gap when it is sort of a boring?
I guess it's the answer to the question is incrementally.
Yeah.
Right? Like I didn't walk on set going, "Hey guys, I got a different idea here. I think we should do this." That would be wrong pretty much with any director. So with Fincher, I just kind of like did my thing, and then there was an opportunity to contribute. I pitched. He said, "Go do it." And then from that moment, I was able to, from time to time, add something, some a flourish or maybe a movement that he was unexpected, to do something within the shot. But generally, with Fincher, I like to say my experience with him is that it's probably the hardest work of my career, probably the toughest movies I've ever done, but it's the most rewarding.
Makes sense.
And when I finished Social Network, I said to my wife, "Okay, we did that one. The movie's great. I never want to do another one with that guy. I'm done." And not because there was any meanness or any. It's just such a high level. The bar is so high that you're expected to be so precise. He would give me instructions like, when Dave Kamaitis stands up, I want you to boom up and split the exit sign with your right frame line.
So you're constantly in the firing line almost.
Totally. And if I did the boom up and pan over and the exit line behind you was not on the frame lines, he would cut.
Wow.
You would cut.
Wow.
And he would say, "Peter, that's not your frame." So that level of precision is exhausting because you're on it all the time.
100%.
However, as a viewer, I love the way he shoots his movies because here's the difference. The difference is the camera never moves unless it's motivated, unless there's a reason for it. You never have the camera moving around in the middle of a shot because the actor's not moving around or adjusting themselves. The camera frame remains static, never moving. Actors move within the frame. However, when you do make a move, it's deliberate. And it's there for a reason.
Well, and it's moving because it's telling the story, not because it's accepting something or fixing something or something like that. That's one of the things for younger operators. When I talk to younger operators, and I myself was there, and I'll ask you whether you were there. When you're first starting out, it's you're not quite sure what a good frame is, maybe, or you're not sure what not that there's a perfect frame, but you're constantly questioning yourself. So there's that thing of, I don't know, maybe I should bring it over a little bit or whatever. But then you eventually learn to trust your instincts, I think. And it's one of the things that a buddy of mine, Jeff, always says, sliders don't have to slide. If you have a slider on, it should be for a reason and whatever, but it doesn't mean that you got to
just because you have a fluid head on or a gear head on doesn't mean you have to adjust it.
It's exactly right. And if it's not telling the story, then it's the wrong thing to do. But it's interesting that you say that because I could see how it's like even though he's not doing it to test you constantly, he's constantly testing you. So even though you're an established operator, you've been around for a long time. I mean, I think it's safe to say most shows don't ask for that level of exactitude.
No. But the thing that's different with Fincher, I remember when we started Gone Girl, which is the film he did after Social Network, and he invited me back for some reason. And I remember in the first week or something, I was just sitting there on the dolly, and David was beside me, and I said, "Hey, I want to ask you something. How much of Social Network did you reframe?" Because what he does on all his movies is he reduces the size of the capture area, leaving a lot of look around on the sensor that you're not using. Yeah. And he does that for several reasons, but one is to be able to recompose slightly, and also he does it because he wants to have the ability to maybe go a few degrees wider or tighter or whatever. So he wants to have flexibility in post. So I asked the question, and he looks at me straight up, and he goes, "All of it." And he walked away. And I at first I thought,
does, right?
should I be wounded? Should I be like,
how do I take that?
And what he meant though is he's probably making literally micro adjustments in the framing
that nobody but him would ever know.
No one would ever know. Yeah. And in fact, when I saw the movie, I can't tell.
I was going to say, I was going to ask you that.
There was nothing in there. Yeah. There was, I didn't frame it like that. There was never that moment. So he makes those adjustments. But the thing about Fincher is because he leaves himself a lot of look around, you're operating with a safety net. Yeah. In other words, if my frame's locked off on you and all of a sudden you lean aggressively over to the right, if I pan to accommodate space,
Yep.
I basically screw him up because now he cannot reposition that in post
Yeah.
because I have a move in there.
Yep.
So what you do, and this is what I tell the other operators when they show up on a Fincher set, is you hold your balls really tight. You realize that you're misframing, that the frame lines are maybe touching your shoulder.
Yeah.
And you realize you're misframing, but you have to hold the frame as hard as it is
Yeah.
because he is going to fix it after.
So essentially, it doesn't move unless he's told you that it moves.
The camera only moves if it's deliberate.
Yeah.
It doesn't move to accommodate
ahead of time.
an
It doesn't
actor.
move to accommodate. Which
So
is, yeah.
if Fincher says cut in the middle of a performance, all the actors look down. Why? Because they want to know if they're off their mark.
Like who dropped the ball?
Yeah, because I can't accommodate. My frame is my frame.
Yep.
So if they're off the mark, then we're going to go
Gotcha.
again.
Yep.
And if it's me
Yeah.
and Ben Affleck looks down to see if he's on his mark, go, Ben, it's not that. It's
Yeah,
me.
yeah. I'm Spartacus.
Yeah, I'm Spartacus. So, but the look it gives his movies, if you turn the sound off and watch
they're
any of
brilliant.
Fincher movies,
Yeah.
you'll understand what I'm talking about. That the camera is extremely, extremely sedentary.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like a witness.
Yep.
The frames are perfectly composed, and yet when there's a move, there's a reason for the move.
Yeah.
There's a
No question
deliberate-
about it. Which
yeah.
is, I mean, you have to respect that, and it like you said, it's designed, and when you watch it, you understand why it was designed that way, and it has the feeling of something that was
Right.
designed.
I mean, that's his thing. That's,
Yeah.
the antithesis would be like, Clint Eastwood, who it's all shot off the Steadicam and he doesn't care. He wants me to follow the puck and adjust things. Sorry, that's
Figure
a Canadian expression, follow the puck.
Follow the
You're going to
puck.
hear
That's
that.
hockey.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So he wants me to recompose on the go and to, that's the way he makes his movies.
Yeah,
So
sure.
it isn't really about that. So, that's the wonderful thing about being an operator
Yeah.
is that you're working with people who have different sensibilities about composition, about movement, about lighting. Sometimes it comes from the director, sometimes it comes from the DP, sometimes it's just a function of the two of them, sometimes it comes from me. But initially it becomes this kind of nucleus of ideas and creativity, and it's different on every movie.
Yeah,
And that's the greatest thing about it. Movies last for me 4 months or so. I do about 2.5 a year, and everyone's different. Every
Agreed.
single movie is a different thing.
Is there a movie that you've done that you're most proud of?
I've been asked
From
that
your-
question
from
before,
your
and I've never really been able to answer it because I always think, well, I'm kind of proud about that one, and
Yeah.
Chicago won all these Oscars, and
Yep.
I guess I'm proud of Chicago,
Sure.
but as a camera operator,
That's
it's
what
my
I-
work with Fincher.
Yeah.
I think that for me will always be a high bar in terms of what I feel, my own style.
Yeah.
Because I love that style. I love the camera not fishing around, not swimming. I love the fact that the frames are so well considered.
There's a reason for everything.
Yeah, there's a reason for everything. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's the best movie I ever made or maybe the one I'm most proud of.
No, but I hear
I
you.
don't know. Sometimes it's the conditions that you work under that
Yeah.
make you proud of what them. But those are, again, we're seeing outside the frame. The audience doesn't see the pain.
Exactly.
So-
well, hopefully. And how many movies have you done with him?
2.
Okay.
2.
And on the second one, did it get less exhausting? And you
It
felt
was
like-
less stressful for
less-
me
because you
I
understood the game,
understood.
sort of,
I
yeah.
understood.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was less stressful for me, and I understood him, more fully. And of course, I had Jeff Cronenweth there, who has been a friend to me, and I've been his operator for so many years that I knew I always had someone there to back me up if something
great.
went down.
Yeah.
But I never really needed it. I mean, the second movie was easier for me. As easy as a Fincher movie could ever get.
Yeah, I hear you.
Because, Gone Girl, I think, was 115 shooting days.
Oh, my gosh.
We went from September to January, and the last 4 weeks were 6 to 8 weeks.
Wow.
So you can understand
a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
Yeah. We shot a lot of takes
Yeah.
of pretty much everything. Yeah.
Talk to me about when you have a B camera operator. What do you expect from your B camera operator? What do you tell your B camera operator? How involved are you with your B camera operator?
Again, that's different on every movie
Sure.
and what's expected. But the B camera operator for me, it's always great if in many ways, what people don't get about the B camera position on a movie is it's in many ways more political than my position, because you need to, as an operator, you need to be present. You need to be there. You need to see the blocking. You need to understand opportunities, see where the A camera's going, notice what lens they're on, understand editing a little bit. So, thinking, okay, what can I get that will integrate well with what Peter's getting? But, however, you can't be so so present that maybe the director looks over and goes, "Oh, there's the B camera operator there. Let's make sure you get something." And now all of a sudden the DP is like going, "Wait, whoa! I haven't even thought about how I'm going to light it yet."
Yeah.
So you can't be too present, but you can't not be there. You can suggest things, but how you suggest things is also very political. Do you put them to the DP? The DP may react like, "No, I don't want to consider a B camera at all." Do you pitch them to the operator? Well, that might be a good idea. If the operator has a very good relationship with the creative people on the movie, then maybe that's a good way to go. Do you pitch them to the director? Maybe yes, maybe no. So a good B camera operator understands the political ramifications of everything that they do on set.
Yep.
Of course, in addition to that, they have to understand, like we said, editing, about what makes a good cut, what shot works well with the shot that we're doing. They have to have a good understanding of lighting and what the DP is trying to do. So if they won't even pitch a shot that's lit flatly if that's something that the DP is clearly not leaning towards. So there's a lot of skills that make up that job. And it's too easy to think, oh, it's kind of a junior position and anyone can kind of do it. Not really. You really, it is kind of a learning job. That's true. You can watch and learn a lot as a B camera operator, but you have to have a certain amount of experience and set skills to pull it off.
It's funny because I always thought that every B camera operator could potentially be an A camera operator, but I know many A camera operators who probably couldn't be B camera operators anymore. Do you know?
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know if they could pull back as much as is necessary, like you said, because it's like. I
think it depends on the indivial.
It depends on the individual, but there's some people I know who's just like, no, you wouldn't be able to.
I did a movie called Gangster Squad where, we were crewing up. Dion Beebe was the cinematographer, and we were crewing up for this movie, and I was having trouble finding a B camera operator who I thought Dion would trust and would fit well with everything, and I got out of the blue. I thought Steve Campanelli, his movie just got shut down. I wonder, and I've known Steve. We're both from Montreal. I've known Steve my whole career, and I called him up and I go, Steve, I know this is a reach, but would you think you would want to be the B camera operator on this movie? He goes, oh shit, yeah, let's do it. And I had a great time. And Steve, whether his ego was bruised or not, he fit right in. And
knowing him, it probably was not. He's just a great guy who loves to work.
And a more recent example would be I did a movie about a year ago or a year and a half ago called Being the Ricardos, and once again, Jeff Cronenweth was the DP, and we talked about B camera, and Aaron Sorkin was the director, and we knew that Aaron wasn't really kind of a visual-oriented director.
Yeah. He's worked with him on West Wing. I know him well.
Exactly.
Yep.
So, smart guy, but I have great Aaron Sorkin stories that are okay to tell.
Yeah.
But again, we just inquired, and Łukasz Bielin happened to be available.
Great.
And we had actually done a movie years ago. My first movie with Peyton Reed, actually, 15 years ago. But I have not crossed paths with Łukasz because he's on his own path trajectory and a camera operator, and I am too. So Łukasz came up, and it became evident that the way we shot that movie was going to be completely different than the way I've shot every movie ever that I've ever done, because Łukasz was such a great creative input. He was so... Well, you know the man, right? I mean, he's so well loved, and all of a sudden, and we would have very little time to block things out. So Łukasz and I would sit shoulder to shoulder during a blocking rehearsal for the director,
and whisper back and
whisper and go, "I think Jeff is putting lights over there, so." If I get her coming in the door, you could be waiting here and maybe pick up her close-up, let her step into your frame. Yeah. And he goes, yeah. And maybe I'll do a little push in. Yeah. Do you do that too? Okay. And we would work this all out, and then by the time, Aaron goes, okay, guys, how long for you? And Jeff goes, I need about an hour. Okay. And then Jeff turns to us and he goes, what are you guys going to do?
What are you guys going to do? Yeah.
And I go, well, here's the proposal.
Yeah.
where are you putting your lights? I'm going to put, okay, so I'm thinking about doing, so we did so many of those shots as handoffs.
That's great. Yeah.
And I think he added so much to the movie, and that was really different because Wukash is just who he is.
Yeah,
he's full of creative energy and really had a good relationship with the cast.
Yeah.
And so
that's fantastic.
So
that's fantastic.
Every movie's different, but that one definitely had.
I'll tell you, I remember on West Wing, we had one scene, and I can sort of see the scene, but I can't really. But I remember asking Aaron afterwards because I was really impressed with it. Oh, you know what it was? The president was having a his weekly physical or monthly physical or whatever he's supposed to get, and the doctor had just had a baby, and he said to him, there are two things you got to teach him because his mother won't. And one was some sport thing. And the other one was, he said, and you got to teach him how to whistle because his mother will never teach him how to whistle. And I remember going up to Aaron and going, that's such a great line. Like, where does that come from? He goes, I don't know. I just hear this stuff. And I said, out of curiosity, when you're writing this, do you see these scenes? And he goes, no, I can't see any of it. Now,
I agree
this
with
was
that.
years ago. It may have changed.
No, it hasn't.
But and I'm thinking like, well, it's in the Oval Office. I mean, but he said, no, I can't see a stitch of it, but I can hear every piece of it. And I was like, wow, that's really amazing. But he's a great storyteller, but he needs, there are parts of him that need to be filled in by people like
he's
yourself.
Actually, there isn't such a big ego there that
No.
he feels like he needs to be the smartest guy in the room. Like if Jeff or myself come up with a different way of shooting it. I like telling this story on Being the Ricardos. There was a scene where Nicole Kidman's walking down a corridor, and I needed to get her from a certain part in the corridor to the front door of her dressing room. And there's dialogue there. And we did a rehearsal, and there wasn't enough dialogue to last the length of the walk. And it had to be that length. So I was kind of like looking like I am now, like my brows were furrowed, and I'm trying to think like, how do I do this? Like if we don't see where she enters frame, then maybe I can shorten the whole thing. And Aaron comes up to me and goes, Peter, what's wrong? And I didn't realize that I was showing my thoughts on my face. And I thought, well, sir, actually, can I be honest? Of course. Well, I don't really. Nicole stopped her dialogue before I got her to the entrance of the dressing room, and we need to have her stop here so that we can cut inside and she meets Javier Bardem there, and they walk in. And he looks at me and goes, "What are you saying?" And I went, and I kind of stopped, and my mouth kind of hung open. He goes, "Are you saying we need more dialogue?" And at this point, Peter shuts up because I'm thinking like, "Holy shit!"
Oh God!
Are you saying
somewhere I didn't think it was going?
Oh,
yeah.
And he goes, "That's not a problem." And I kid you not, here's what happened. He had his laptop, like the one you have here.
Oh yeah.
And he drops to the carpet in front of me. He drops right down to the ground, opens up his laptops, and he opens it up, and he finds where he is.
Yep.
And then he looks at me and he goes, "How much?"
Yep.
And I go, "How much what? How much time do you need?" I need 8 seconds. Okay. He starts typing. Everyone's looking at me, and I'm like, sweat is starting to break because I'm thinking, I've never done this in my life. I've never asked a director to write more dialogue to accommodate a shot. And he goes, great. Okay, 9 seconds. Here we go. Hey, Nicole. And he brings over Nicole. They look at the computer. She looks at the new dialogue. We shot the first take. It was perfect. But that's how Aaron works.
His mind is there's different connections that happen in there that most people don't have. But I thought we were gonna go with Peter wants you to say these new lines.
Oh yeah, no, thank God.
So
No.
you're like, wait, no, I didn't. This
He didn't do that.
completely
He
out of
didn't do
control.
that.
That's
but
great.
but the director's sitting cross-legged on the floor in front of the whole crew.
Doesn't surprise me at all.
And he's typing away, going.
And especially the thing that I remember specifically, like when he's writing, he's in a different place.
Oh yeah,
he's not even in the room anymore. It's
Yeah,
like
true.
there's a savant thing there. There's no question, and that's why his
the only other,
shows sound
without
the way
using
they
too
do.
much of your podcast time,
No.
the only other story I would say about Aaron is that there was a few shots in the movie where we ran single camera, and sometimes I would do them, and sometimes Wukash would do them. And by the way, a week into that movie, I went to the director. I went to Stuart, the producer, and I said, Stuart, I want to change my screen credit on this movie. I've never done this in my career. I don't want to be a camera operator. I just want to be listed with Wukash as camera operator.
That's cool. That's very cool.
And he said, "Did you approve this with Jeff?" And I go, "I'm going to."
Yeah. Yeah.
But I want that. Can you make that? Can you make sure? And then in post production, I actually called him to make sure he didn't
Yeah,
forget.
because you could see that getting lost.
Yeah, and it didn't. And he says no. And then that's how the movie showed.
That's really
because
cool.
Wukash was not a B camera operator on that movie.
No, I know. And
right?
everybody, it's funny because people, there are some movies where there's completely an A and a B camera operator,
Yeah.
and then there's some movies where there are two camera operators.
That
Yeah.
wasn't.
That's great.
So I walked over to, I had nothing to do. Wukash was operating, one camera setup.
Yep.
And I walked over to the director's video village just to watch the shot. I had my, just stood there behind the chair. And action. And they start performing. And Aaron is looking, he's got his headphones on.
Yep.
And he's staring down at his computer. He's looking at the script. He's not watching what happens. And then he always says, "Cut, great." And I said, Aaron, what? I said, you weren't watching. Oh no, but I watch sometimes. And I look at the script supervisor and I go, "Does he watch?" And she goes, and she smiled kind of guilty, and she goes, "I think he watches sometimes." And then Aaron starts, "Well, Peter, what's the problem? I mean, if there's a problem, you would say something to me,
he
right?" He
trusts you at the end of the day.
And I go, "Well, that's correct. And of course, sir, I would say something to you. But maybe there's subtleties in the performance that I'm not seeing.
Yeah.
Oh, I completely trust you guys. I couldn't make my point. It's just the way he is.
Yep.
So he basically.
But there's something beautiful about that. He obviously felt comfortable enough with you that it's like.
I know, but we're not making radio.
No, I know. I understand that.
I want the director's input because the director's input steers the ship. It controls the direction. It controls the emotion of the entire. So a director may say, "You know what? I think we should be tighter on that moment." Or you're an experienced camera operator. You need the input visually of the director because they're the only one that sees the whole thing as an entity.
But like you said at the beginning, every show is different, right? So my guess is you probably took that conversation and went back on the camera and went, "Okay, I got to start thinking about this a little differently because the thing that maybe normally I wouldn't bring up because they're watching, I may now have to bring up."
That happened.
You've been in this long enough to know to have done this as well. It's one of the things that I've noticed that I fight a lot with digital, because with film, I would bring up almost everything because it was like, well, transmission might have gone out. Maybe they didn't see it. In other words, I didn't count on them seeing exactly what I see.
Right.
And now there are times where I'll go, well, they saw that. And then I'll go, I just better. You guys saw that, right? No, we didn't see that. We got to go. Okay. So, but do you fight that sometimes of knowing that they've got this 39-inch monitor or whatever it is where,
You know what? I have to say it doesn't change the way I think about my responsibility. Yeah. I know you and I have had this conversation before in other venues because I have a very, very strong feeling that the camera operators, the gatekeeper, you're the point of no return. By the time it happens, if you see it, it's already too late, and it can't be fixed because it's been recorded. And people will say, as you pointed out, well, they're all in front of 30-inch monitors, and everyone can see that. But the thing is, they're all looking at different things.
Or their phone.
Yes. Let's assume for a moment they're looking.
They're looking at the monitor.
But the props guy is going to be looking at the props.
Agreed.
The director may be watching performances and might be into the movie and looking at Nicole Kidman, going, "She's awesome," which she is awesome. So everyone's looking for, or Jeff maybe, the cinematographer, might be concerned about something in the background. Maybe he's working with his gaffer to change something on a second take. You never know what's happening there. Yeah. The only person who is literally in charge of the whole frame in a general way is the camera operator. Yeah. So I don't assume for a second that someone noticed this thing or this thing. Yep. I always report it. Yep. Always. Because you just never know.
I'm the same way, but like I said, sometimes, especially at the end of a long day or whatever, I find myself having to fight being lazy and going, they must have seen that, and I walk back and just double check or whatever.
Yeah, I know it's tough.
It's tough because you do also get that mental burnout by the end of, like, you're just firing a little slower and whatever.
And also, there's a danger there of if you go to the director too often with those kinds of things, they're going to go, "Oh, don't worry, it's just Peter talking about some thing in the background." So sometimes your concern needs to be steered toward maybe another department or
Yep.
maybe the DP or something
Yeah.
because the director isn't really going to process all these notes.
100%. 100%. Are there ever any times when you're on these movies where you're looking through the eyepiece and you're just like, I can't believe I get to watch this?
All the time. All the time. Really, there are moments in my career where I've been on the eyepiece and I can't believe I'm witness to this. And I don't know. I mean, like, I hope you're not going to ask for examples, but there are times where I'm transported and I'm no longer operating, which is not a good thing. I should always be conscious of what I'm doing and not seeing the performance because I'm thinking of a lot of other things.
Yeah.
My responsibility is bigger than what the performance is, but yet there are times when I'm just like looking through and I'm watching the movie and I'm lost in the movie. You know,
It's the best. Look, to me, that always means it's working.
It's completely
Because
working.
either
Yeah.
if their performance isn't doing it, or if something else in the background or some extra, or my operating isn't doing it.
But it doesn't
something's
always
not
mean
working.
it's going to be a great movie.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
It means that performance at that moment, at that time,
Yes.
is stunning and life-changing because you're seeing someone give such an amazing performance, but it doesn't necessarily.
It just means it has the potential to be a good movie.
Yeah, exactly. There's going to be a good scene in that movie.
So tell me about working with a dolly grip who's not your normal dolly grip, because like we all have the people that we work with all the time, and
Right.
that's a relationship. But what happens when you show up and it's a totally new person? Do you do some testing out to figure out what they know, how they know, whatever? How do you deal with them? How do you deal with them if they aren't quite up to what you want?
Well, I don't think you can do any testing out because it's not like there's going to be a dolly grip training day or something.
No,
But-
I meant more of like figuring out where their level of expertise is, how to find out what that is, so you know what to expect from them, I guess is the point.
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think that there's a feeling out process with a new dolly grip where they're beginning to understand how I work, and I'm beginning to understand what their strong points are and their weak points are. I will usually, I mean, it's a political thing too, because generally the first thing that happens when I get a call to do a movie, literally, I put the phone down. When I decide to do a movie and say yes, before we've even cut the deal, the next phone call I make is going to be to probably Brad Ray or John Mang or one of those dolly grips I work with.
Yep.
It'll probably be to the key grip. So, and I'll say, hey, look, it's Peter Rosenfeld. I'm going to be your camera operator. I'm really happy to be working with you. I'm really looking forward to this movie. It's a great script, da-da-da-ba-ba, bullshit. And then say, hey, I want to talk about dolly grip. Because sometimes what happens is that key grip may think, oh, well, this is a perfect time to move my guy up and give him a chance at the A camera. And that, for me, when they say that, there's usually a yellow alert light going off. And I'm thinking, well, if you're going to move him up to A camera, you're going to do it on something other than this movie. Yeah. You know, like I'm happy to have him there on B camera. But so there's this political thing that needs to happen where you and the key grip need to come to, you know, if none of my people are available and if I'm not comfortable what he's pitching and there's nothing else and you're now shooting somewhere that they can't bring someone in or whatever the case. So directly to answer your question, there's a period of a couple of days where I'm kind of getting a sense of it. And usually I get a sense of it really fast, whether they're going to be a journeyman or whether they're going to be a collaborator, you know, because Brad Ray and Johnny Mag, those guys are collaborators. Like when I watch a full-on blocking rehearsal with the cast, Brad and I are standing shoulder to shoulder. Yeah. And I often go, Brad, how are we going to do this? Well, he says, what about putting a remote hidden on the dolly? Then you don't have to worry about that part. Okay, good. Okay, let's keep watching. Because, you know, he's done so many movies, and why not draw upon that experience? And I don't always go with his suggestions, but I would have to say 90% of the time we're on the same page. Yeah. 90, more than that. So if you're working with a dolly grip who's not a collaborator like that, or who isn't really at that point, maybe they will be, but they're not there yet, then they're what I call, I don't know if I'm using the term correctly, but they're kind of a journeyman where they have all the skills, they know what to do, they know how to level track, they know how to, you know, everything, all the mechanical skills are there, but they haven't gotten to that Zen level of dolly grippery.
And storytelling.
That's all about storytelling. So I think that it's a warming up process. I may sometimes will simplify shots or maybe convince a director, I said, well, you're going to put a cut in there, right? When this guy comes in the door? Yeah, well, let's cut there because I think we should say, I wouldn't try and do too much unless it's a request.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't try and pack too much into a dance floor move, keep it simple as best I can. Honestly, to be truthful, there are times when I put the Steadicam on for a shot that maybe I should have really been doing on a dolly, but I'm confident in my own skills, and I thought, I can't take a risk of this going bad. I'm just going to do it on a Steadicam. I see you nodding, so you've been there too.
We've built on it.
So, there are times, I don't like sliders, but there are times I'll go on a slider because I just can't really, trust that it's going to happen when I want it to happen. And
there's that weird thing that sometimes you are stuck in that position where it's not the person you want, and this person has maxed out. Or in this period of time, they're not going to get to where you need them to be.
Yeah.
So then you start backwards engineering. How do we get exactly what I need, but not throw someone under the bus or ask someone to do more than they can or whatever.
And be political about it. And be nice about it.
Which is a big part of it, right?
That's a huge part of it.
And there's also, I've been in, I think, one situation before where it's been, I couldn't have the person that I wanted and they wanted to move someone up, and I talked to them and I mistakenly felt that they were ready. And then it was sort of like, look, I also don't want you to be destroyed by this. Like, you're not quite there, and you probably will be. And I think since then, actually, he is. But there's protection there, right? Like, you don't want to. People can only be as good as they can be. What about crane shots? So what? It's interesting that you were saying you'll ask him. What does he think? Because one of the things that I tend to do is in my mind I'll go, okay, like specifically with crane shots, but dolly shots also. Is I'll sort of think in my mind, okay, so I think the base should be over there and my controls will be over here and we'll swing from here to here. But then I'll talk to my dolly group and go, hey, this is where what the camera has to do. What do you think we should do? Just to see, because if we're on the same page, I know we're going down the right road. But maybe I haven't thought of something.
I do the exact same thing.
Yeah.
I run it through the dolly grip. If it's Brad, then I'll run it through him, and I'll say, it feels like, or I'll just say, where do you think the base should be? Because we need to be there, and then we need to be there. And he goes, well, we can do this on a pickle, and then we can over here, and we can put it. He'll already be thinking of this.
And 9 times out of 10, you're both on the same page.
9 times out of 10, we're both on the same page.
Yeah.
And the few times where we're not on the same page, I'm probably going to go with his thoughts because Brad's done so many movies and he's such a good dolly grip and he understands it, and he's probably more right than I am. And there isn't always one right way to do it. As you can set it up sometimes in different configurations, but and part of the things for us are swinging and backpan compensating, and there are other options that are available to us that maybe don't involve that. So I think that if it's a situation where I don't really again, I'm not working with a regular dolly grip who I know, and it's someone who's just kind of like learning the thing, I may be a little more specific about no, the base needs to go here because you're going to do this, and then all of a sudden we're going to be stuck. So you can't put the base there. It may be easier to put the base there, and you're going to have to build and level the steps over here.
And I'm sorry, but
that's where the crane needs to be. So I will do that sometimes, but again, it depends on what you just said, the relationship you have with the dolly grip and how much trust there is there. Yeah. And, I know that the guys I work with regularly, we're not in the business of
there's
failing.
a level of respect there. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I'll find is sometimes I'll put in there and I'll go, look, everything you're saying is right, but I have a feeling that once we start this shot, we're going to end up tacking that on or having to do this, and I want to be ready for that because I can just see where this is going.
That's true. That's another thing from your earlier question about what makes a good camera operator is you're thinking one shot ahead, sometimes 2 shots ahead. I will always ask the AD at least 15 times a day, what's after this? What are we doing after this? Oh, we're going to do this one here. And what is that? Oh, he's going to come in and be, okay, good. And now I have information that I can spread to my crew to help. Okay, you know what? Listen, build the Steadicam with the 27 mil on because that's what we're going to rehearse with, and that's the next shot. So we better get that going now. Or let them know outside the crane works for this shot. So just trying to stay one shot ahead of everything helps the AD to keep the day going, to make sure, and it helps your department knowing that, okay, great, let's start getting that stuff off the truck.
You're gonna need to move your carts in 2 shots, so start thinking about where they're going.
Exactly. We're going to turn around over here, and all that's going to be in shot.
Talk to me how do you work with the AD? What's your
such a critical position on a film set. The AD can make it a pleasure or can make it miserable. I know you've done so many projects and you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Been there in both places.
The most important thing for me with an AD is that they're kind. They don't blame people. They don't say, well, we're going again because props didn't bring in the right thing. And just that's not important. We're just going again.
Yep.
So I think it's a question of collaboration and respect for the crew that the AD has a lot of pressure. They're under a lot of different constraints that we may not even be aware of. Actors have to leave, catch flight, whatever, all that stuff that's in their world. So I have respect for them because what they're doing is really tough. I always said it's the toughest job with the exception of possibly a focus pulling. AD is the job you don't want, because if a film goes really, really well, no one says afterwards, oh, that job was so well AD'd.
That was a great AD'd film.
Yeah. But if it's a
that.
Disaster and goes over budget, then the studio, the first place they're going to look is how did this go on set? Did the AD make the best use they can of their time?
No question.
So what I look for in an AD is collaboration, is kindness, is the ability to maybe consider other needs other than their own. If we do this now, then we can wrap all this stuff and I can send those guys home because we don't need the crane for the last 3 shots. If we just change the plan and do this now, we can then be done with this whole set.
Yeah.
And then they'll go, oh, right, okay, but maybe it's no good because maybe an actor is leaving or whatever. But the point is that, I work very, very closely, or at least I like to, with the AD to help them as best I can, not just in little ways like what's coming next, but also like, tell me about tomorrow. Like, where do you think we're going to be tomorrow? Well, we're going to start with this shot coming in. And that helps me too, because now all of a sudden in the middle of the day, I can start briefing my team, hey, tomorrow, first thing up is going to be Steadicam. It's going to be a 2-camera shoot. The other camera will probably be on a dolly. But so all good stuff. So they all, it can all work a little more smoothly.
And I think the key to all of that, even with all these different departments, is basically saying you're sort of letting them know, look, I'm thinking about what your problems are as well, even though it's helping you in the long run. But you're sort of putting that out there so that when you do have a problem, they can step in and go, now it's my turn to help you back.
Exactly.
That's kind of, it's sort of stacking the deck in a weird way.
I mean, you have an advantage when you're working in series because you're going to have the same AD.
Yes.
For
you develop a relationship, good or bad.
Yeah. Whereas in movies, everything gets mixed up, and even movies with the same AD are going to be different because the director's different and the studio's different, and so even if we may have worked together before, it'll be a different situation again. So.
You've worked with massive actors, and I'm sure you've worked with method actors. I'm sure you work with the actors who are telling a joke and then they call action and they turn it on and whatever. What could you tell younger operators about getting actors to trust you, working with actors who maybe aren't hitting their marks and you need them to hit their marks? Discussing when to talk to the actors, when not to talk to the any of that stuff. I know that's a massive 12-hour discussion.
That's a massive question. I think the most important thing is to be smart about it. Try and get a sense whether they're when they're in performance, if they're method, if you can't really talk to them too much in the middle of takes, in between takes, I should say. But I think that for a lot of actors, they're looking for a reaction. They're looking for someone. When the director says cut, usually the first person they see is the one right behind the camera. And that relationship is more important than you think, because we're really the first viewer. We're the first audience member number 1. Even though everyone else has seen it, the actor only has eye contact with me. And sometimes just getting off the camera and smiling and going, maybe a little thumbs up, or like some, like that was great, or whatever, or even just saying really, really good, we're good here. So the actor goes, okay, so he's good. So if we're going to go again, I don't know if I can do that again. If we're going to go again, then it'll be the director that's going to want that. So even that's important, knowing that they have confidence that the shot's been captured correctly, that nothing is incorrect. I think that the relationship between an operator and an actor is really important, and it's a relationship that sometimes gets a little bit jambled because of the fact that sometimes now we're on remote heads, which is another reason why I always try and operate where I can see the set.
Yep.
I never try and be in a place where I can't see the set.
I've never understood that also is like there's this new thing where even if you can see the set, like if you're outside or there are lights, people box you in with these flags as if you can't see anything. And I'm like, first of all, I'd rather not be able to see perfectly and see the set than I don't understand.
I take them away. Yeah, I stop them from happening. The grips don't do it anymore because if it were outside and there's a really
Look, if you can't see the monitor, you can't see the monitor.
Yeah, but I don't want to be closed off.
Yeah.
I want to, yeah. And usually if I'm working with a dolly grip who I've worked with a lot, they'll know where.
They know off the bat.
They know where to put me. They'll put Peter right here in this corner.
Or they learn pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But
to get into to completely dig into more of what you asked me, because there's good stuff in there, is how do you tell an actor they've missed their marks? I mean, if you just say you're not on your mark, it can be interpreted as somewhat rude. Again, it depends on the actor and depends on who the relationship between the operator and the actor. But
there's also the thing is you want to be very careful to not let them think that this whole scene is about the mark, because it's not. Even though they're important. So that's always
usually the first thing I would do is I would walk over to them. I wouldn't broadcast this across the set, and I would say something like, "Is there anything I can do to help you with hitting your mark?" "Oh, I'm not hitting it?" "No, not really. You're kind of ending up over here, and it really, really works better for us if you could be around here." "Oh, well, well, I can give you a little sausage so you can feel it with your foot."
A little mini sandbag. Yeah.
A little mini sandbag, yes. Thank you. Not a sausage. Yeah.
Well, maybe
you know
you do a sausage. I don't know.
Little mini sandbag so you can feel it with your foot, or maybe I can move a piece of set dressing there so you can feel it in front of you that's out of frame, and they'll appreciate the fact that you're handling this one-on-one. They'll appreciate the fact that I want to do something to help them hit their mark, rather than say, "Can you please hit your mark?"
Yeah.
Fincher can say that,
sure,
but not Peter.
No.
For me, it's more delicate. You're working with big actors, and usually it's just a question of, hey, you know what, Denzel, when you come in the room, it would really be helpful to me. "Oh, you want me here?" "Yeah." "Not here." "No." "Well, can you make it work over here?" Well, let me work on that. And sometimes you do, because maybe there's a reason why they want to be at that new position. They feel more comfortable, and at the end of the day, it's really about performance, and it's really about performance capture.
Exactly.
So if Denzel wants to be there instead of there, then now I go back to the DP and go, you know what, he's going to be 4 feet over to his left. Can we adjust for that? I can on the camera. It's not a problem. I still have a good background.
But how are we doing with everything else?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So sometimes you have to reverse engineer it. If he wants to be there, then let's just move the mark there.
Yeah. No, but that's also a really interesting point, is you go up and you start talking to them and you immediately try to read where this is going, because if it's going to a place where it's like he's clearly going to hit that position every time, then you might as well bail and
stop
run and
right
go,
there,
because otherwise you're just building up walls at that point.
Yeah,
and there are those
right
actors
there.
who it's just like, and some of them will even do something differently just because it's something different, as opposed to that. So you don't want to build that up. And then so then what do? You go back to the DP and you go, look, I've tried to make this mark work. I just don't think it's going to happen. And how do you want to move forward?
That's exactly what I would say.
Yeah.
I use those words.
Yeah.
I tried to make this mark work. I don't think it's going to happen. I think we should adjust the shot slightly to make it work where he wants to go or she wants to go.
Yeah. It's a game, and then specifically though, if you're working with someone who is method, and then for anybody who's listening who doesn't know what method is, it's basically they are completely in character. They are not on a set. They are. I can't think of any characters in a movie, but they're the character in the movie.
Yeah.
The last thing in the world you want to do is be talking about the physics of
the mechanics.
Shooting, the mechanics of shooting a movie.
Yep.
So if something is so specific, like this person needs to be here, because if they're not here when they turn and point back there, we're not going to see what they're pointing through that window, or something so specific. How do you speak to them? I'm asking because I'd like to know, because I've been in those situations, and it's always like, ooh, I'm going to try this, I'm going to try that. It's a little weird, right?
I try and make it seem like it's our problem.
Yeah.
And we all have to solve it together. I can't solve it completely by myself. I need to solve it with your help.
Yep.
Again, reading the room is super important. But if it's an actor who seems flexible and it isn't working out, then again, I'll come off the dolly, I'll walk over and say, I could use your help on this one because, and here's Peter asking me for help,
Yep.
So that's what I'm talking about, such a really connection between the operator and the cast, because there needs to be trust. There needs to be
exactly.
Like, how many times have you seen a performer look at their reflection in the filter on the front of the lens and check something?
And check errors.
And when that happens, I note it because I know they might be insecure about something. Like maybe it's her hair, or maybe maybe it's an actor thinking they might have they had a bite to
broccoli in their teeth.
Yeah, they just had a donut.
Yep.
So they're doing something now, of course, they don't realize that everybody's seeing them do this. So I try and discourage it because all the monitors show them doing this. But I note it because I think, something's going on here. He or she is a little concerned about this. So now you watch it for them.
Yep.
And then, if there's something to be done, you can either call for their makeup artist and always call for the makeup artist by their name. Never makeup, or say to the AD, I need to see makeup. Wrong. I need to see Carol.
Yeah.
You do? Yes, please. Can you ask Carol to come and see me?
That's a great note.
And now the makeup artist for the movie star comes to you. Hey, and of course, day one, I would have introduced myself to all those people.
Sure.
Those people are super, super important, more important than you realize.
Yeah.
My wife is a makeup artist. I learned all about it. So I will then talk to them and say, hey, you know what? There's a little something going on in her teeth.
Yep.
Just check it out when you have an opportunity. Or it's a hair thing. I noticed that when she looked down, the hair fell down, covered her eyes, and she was shadowed on her eyes. I couldn't see her eyes. Can you help us at all with that? And of course, the actor probably sees this going on, right? But they see how it's handled.
100%.
It's handled delicately between me and another person, and that person who is the person in charge of touching them will go and then say, hey, we need to, and then blah, blah, blah.
And the other thing, you bring up a really good point is makeup, hair and makeup are so incredibly important for so many reasons. But one of the biggest reasons is they usually have the ear of the actor.
They have the ear of the actor.
And if hair and makeup trust you as an operator, then chances are good the actor's going to trust you as an operator. But the thing that I hear you saying in all of that to me is, it's really when you get to that point when you're working with someone who's either tough or who's method, and you don't want to mess with their head and in their moment, but you need something. It's all that trust that you've built up to that point where they realize, like, you know what, Peter's not going to ask me this unless he absolutely has to.
Exactly.
So whatever I'm going to have to do to break slightly to figure that out, I want to help him because. And you said something that resonated with me because I remember once where an actor came up and was looking at the filter I think it was actually to see if there's something in her teeth.
Yeah.
And I immediately went, oh, don't do that. And she goes, no. And I said, no, look, everybody's looking at you. And so I took the onboard monitor and I turned it off. And I said, here, you can look in this. This looks sort of, this will reflect you. And she goes, oh, thank you. And immediately she was like, oh, this is someone who's protecting me, because the last thing I wanted, I had my eye up in the eyepiece. And of course, before I knew it, I'm looking at this close up of her teeth. But,
Right.
But I think that's really what it's all about, is like from day one, you're sort of going, not in a whole 2023 space, but this is a safe space, like where you are here, and I've got your back, and hopefully they have yours as well, right?
It's hearing that, we all have to realize that the actor's position is different than anything else on set, because we all hide behind our jobs. We all have our own issues in our lives. Okay, I'm having a bit of trouble at home or whatever, or my car is not starting, whatever it is. But the actor bears their soul.
They're vulnerable.
They're there, and they're all insecure.
Yep.
Different levels of insecurity. Some desperately insecure, some only a tiny bit, but they all need reassurance because they're there. They open up their guts. They're revealing themselves to the camera. If you think about it for a second, hey, Dave, come on, I want you to sit down, and I'm going to put a camera on you, and I want you to think about something terrible in your life and start to cry.
Yeah.
So now, where are you going to go for that? Where are you going to dig that out? That's really, really personal.
Oh, it's completely.
And so having respect for that, understanding that position requires many, many things we will never even come close to understanding.
Absolutely.
And And really, those are the things that sometimes make the movie fantastic or make the movie lackluster, because there isn't that little something that you would expect in a performance. So performance capture, that's what we do, but we also, there's performance support. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you have to be there
that's good.
and understanding of what's happening in front of you. So again, it's about relationships, and it's everything you mentioned, but it's an understanding that they go places we never, ever have to go.
And just throwing in from a point of view of like a tip for younger operators, I think that also comes to, I mean, hopefully you're never screaming across the set for whatever, but when there's a quieter scene, when there's a more important scene, whatever, and you turn to your crew and go, look, I don't want any talking here. Everybody's going to be quiet. I mean, you should be, hopefully anyway, but this is a really serious scene. So let's let's just all be on our best behavior and not be. And I don't care if it's a technical problem. Let's take it off set. We don't want to bring it into this. And I think all of that adds up, right, to where they go, oh, these people understand what I'm having to go through here.
Right.
And so then I think when you're doing that big Steadicam shot, and at the very end, you just can't make something work, and you go, hey, is there any chance you could turn this way because it'll just finish it? They'll give it to you because you were there for them.
Right.
So there's so much stuff about that. One of the things I ask I'm going to give you one first because we've talked about this. Tell me about looking through an eyepiece on digital cameras versus looking at a monitor.
God.
Come on, go, Peter.
The reason Dave is asking me this question is because he knows that this is a thing of mine. It's a pet peeve I have, which is
explain it for people who might not know what we're talking about.
In the transition from film to digital, one of the benefits and the trap is that there are very large, high-definition monitors that we can work off of. And these include also the small high-definition monitors that are sitting on the camera. And it's tempting for many operators to just operate off the monitor. And many people do it. And I'm not judging, although maybe I am a little bit.
You're judging.
But I'm trying to understand that everyone has their own method, that everyone can look off, if I want to operate off a monitor, I want to operate off a monitor. But I go through this thing with younger operators, showing them and explaining the advantages, of which there are many, of looking through an EVF or the eyepiece. And there are so many advantages, to list them all would take up another podcast. But the idea is that when you're looking through the EVF, what happens is that your image is actually quite large. And I did a test years ago for my own amusement, where I sat in a theater similar to the one we're sitting in, and I tried to move my eyeball and scan across the screen and counted how many seconds it took me at a particular rate of travel. And then I do the same thing in the EVF, looking through the image on my viewfinder, and I did the same thing. And what I came up with is roughly a 30 or 40 foot screen sitting about halfway back in a cinema.
Wow.
That's somewhere, maybe even a little further back, but that's somewhere around the virtual image size because of the diopters, because of the magnifier.
Yeah.
So now if you think about it for a second, I'm seeing an image where I can look and direct my attention toward, let's say, a Starbucks cup underneath a seat, because that cup virtually is quite large in my frame.
Sure.
Because my frame is so big.
I think it was on the table, actually.
Yeah,
I remember.
I know.
Anyway,
You've heard me tell this story before, the Game of Thrones thing. But the thing is, if you're operating off of a monitor, there is no way you're going to see those kinds of details.
No question.
You're not going to see the reflection in the piece of glass back there, or on the mirror, or on the frame that's sitting on the mantle. You won't see the reflection of the stand.
Picture frame, yeah.
Picture frame. You won't catch a detail of maybe hair being out of place, because you may not notice it when you're looking at a small monitor. But the things you see are incredible. You also will see, reason number one. Reason number two is, again, is focus. So when you look through the eyepiece, you can adjust the level of focus enhancement or peaking. And I usually have it on there all the time, unless the shot is so wide that I know I don't need it, and I'll turn it off. But you said you're going to ask me what to do in prep. Remind me to talk about this in prep.
No, that's one of my next questions. Yeah.
But so I have a button on the side of the camera to turn peaking on and off, and I will always have it on if we're on a close-up. Why? You could say, well, why, Peter? Because you have a focus puller. They have a great big monitor. They're looking at it. You got everyone else looking at great big monitors. They're looking at it. Here's the reason. If you're going to make a correction for focus, there's a very, very small window after the director calls cut. Usually cut great. After you know they've cut and they like the take, there's a very, very, it can be as little as 5 seconds where the only voice that should be heard is me going, I'm so sorry, guys. I could use another one.
You got to get that in there quick.
Why, Peter? I could do better. And I always say that. I never, ever say it's focus or it's dolly. I say I can do better. I can do better. I accept responsibility for everything on the camera that's not perfect.
Yep.
The crew around me appreciates that. Of course, if the director says, "I need to know, Peter, what's bad about it,"
that was my question, because sometimes
then
we'll do
of course you're not going to lie. You're going to, if you're pressed on it, of course you have to say, "Well, when Dave leaned forward on the chair, it took a little while before we got the focus on him." Oh, don't worry, I'm not using that part. I have that from the other shot. That's fine, but it's my job to report it. You can't report it if you don't see it, and you won't see it on the monitor. So that's reason number one, is it makes you a participant in focus. And I've always, my whole career, made a very strong pitch that focus is a shared responsibility. It's shared because the focus puller needs your help to make sure that they do their job perfectly. And of course, you need their help, because if it's not in focus, the greatest Steadicam shot of my career, we're going to have to go again. Or we may even be called back to do it again another day in the schedule because it's out of focus. So you're
really the gatekeeper at the end of the day.
You're the gatekeeper. Sure so focus is really important. The only way you can really be sure is to seeing it through an EVF. Remember that if you're looking at a monitor, you're probably going to have some kind of flag behind you because there's maybe a reflection on the monitor. You may not even really be able to see, because if you're shooting outside, there's going to be so much ambient light on that monitor. Whereas when you look through when you put your head against the eyepiece and you're looking at the image inside the EVF, you're in a perfect environment. You've created that environment. I do that in prep. I set it up to the brightness, the contrast that I want. I have presets. I have LUTs that I put on there sometimes. LUTs are color manipulation. I sometimes change the color manipulation from what the DP is doing for the movie, because sometimes they want the movie dark and they want, but I need to see everything. So I can set up my own viewing system for me. In order to do my job. So you can't really do that off of monitor. Not really possible. Also, another, I won't go on and on and on, but I find that if I'm connected with the camera, with my eye against the eyepiece, the camera body and my body function as one. We're not disconnected. It's hard to do it in a podcast because you can't see what I'm doing. But if you're operating and you're just moving the pan handle and just kind of like looking at the monitor as it changes direction, it's going to have a slightly different look and be less precise than if you were actually pressing your eye against the eyepiece and moved your whole body to operate the shot. It looks completely different.
Just because the camera becomes part of your body, essentially.
It becomes, there's more weight to it all of a sudden. There isn't this fishiness, because it isn't just floating on a panhandle. It's connected to you. And there are times when you need to have your body language and your position. I will often chalk mark my feet on the dolly or on the ground so that I always end up in the same position for repeated takes. I never want to have my feet in another position for take 12 than I was for take 7 because so much of it is just learned momentum. It's just the ability to constantly reproduce the same shot. You want to be in exactly that muscle memory needs to have exactly the same position for your feet. So all those things don't work with a monitor because a monitor doesn't really care where you are, doesn't really care where you're standing. You could be sitting on the dolly and just have it in front of you, and then someone can come and move the monitor, and it's like, okay, yeah, that's fine. I'm watching it right here. I think I truly believe that it's a bit of laziness. I understand that it's more comfortable. I understand that you can keep your back straight, and but there are ways to get around this by adjusting the dolly, raising your height, raising the position of your hips, changing where the eyepiece is, whether you need to move it forward or swing it over to an area where it's more comfortable. There's always a way around it. But I think I may have given you enough. But I can keep going on
No,
this.
I know
because,
you can. That's why I asked.
Because I feel strongly about it.
The thing that I would add to that is I think that when you get your eye to an eyepiece, it's almost like you leave the set and you become part of the story.
Totally.
You enter into a world, and it's just, you're doing a close-up of an actress giving some amazing performance. You're there.
You're in a perfect viewing environment.
It's a very different thing.
It's uncomplicated by the bullshit that's happening around the set.
Yeah.
Brad Ray's changed the page on his book. You notice that someone's walked in the door and they shouldn't have.
Yeah.
All those things that really shouldn't be part of your world.
They're not part
of
storytelling. That you shut all that out. There's no question about it. The thing that fascinates me about these new digital, because the digital eyepieces are essentially just a little small thing that has a cable to it. It's not a long tube that goes, as a viewing system. For some reason, whenever I do film, and when I used to do film, you couldn't adjust the eyepieces very much. There was just a long eyepiece and maybe a medium and a short, and you could just basically turn it up and down. But they always seemed to be exactly where I wanted them to be. I could get them perfectly. And there's something about the digital eyepieces that you can move them so many different ways that it takes me forever to figure out exactly where I want it to be. And it seems like it should be the opposite. You should just be able to put it right there. But it's I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just my body. But
and also we didn't have a choice.
But that could be it. Although when I've gotten back on film cameras, I'll just sort of put it up higher and I'll go, oh yeah, this is great.
This is where it should be.
Maybe mentally I just maybe it's just.
I mean, I've changed. I often don't use the bracketry that comes with the camera unless I'm handheld, where it needs to be really sturdy.
Yeah.
But if I'm operating conventionally and just using the viewfinder, I often use a articulating arm or a Noga arm, as we call it. And I dispense with all the bracketry that comes with the camera, and I put a articulating arm, attach the EVF to my arm, and now I can move it closer, push it further away. I can look down and be higher. Or if the camera's against the wall and I can't physically even be there, 9 times out of 10, an operator will go, okay, no problem, I'll operate off the monitor. Not me. I'm going to just swing the EVF over to my side and operate, on the wrong side of the camera, but operate with the EVF.
So because we're talking about, and this is something I wanted to ask, because you do something a little different but similar in concept to what I've done in the past. Most of these digital cameras have lag. And some are worse than others, to the point that I've been on some things where we're doing, a stunt or a gunshot or something like that, and I almost have to watch what's happening because there's a lag in the camera. You were telling me something that you do in post specifically to figure out in prep, to figure out specifically about lag.
Yeah, I measure the latency or lag in the equipment that I'll be using. So the equipment that I'll be using would be the EVF that they've given me that comes with the camera, whether it's Panavision camera or Sony or whatever it is, and also the onboard monitor, and also the big monitor that would be sitting on the crane, which I'll get to at the end, because that's the one where you can't really work too much with lag because there's so many other things in there that cause latency that that's a whole rat's nest right there. But since most of the movie will be me looking through the eyepiece, I start with that, and I can explain in this podcast how I do it, but I think probably the better way to do it is to just go to my Instagram, and I post stuff like this on my Instagram, and there's actually
what's your Instagram handle?
Peter Rosenfeld.
Oh, that's easy.
Peter, yeah.
Right.
Peter.Rosenfeld.
Yeah.
So, and on my Instagram, I explain how I do it in prep, which is basically using a time code slate that you take a still photo on, and so imagine taking a still photo of a time code slate, but in the photo that you're taking is the slate and the monitor or EVF that is looking at the slate. And then you have both images, both numbers are in the same frame.
Yep.
And you just subtract one number from the other, and you usually have your hundredths of a second.
Yep.
and then I just convert that back to it's a frame delay.
Yeah, it's funny when we started talking about that because I do something very similar. I just take a video, and then when you have the video, you can scroll and stop at any point. So you've got a number of still frames essentially.
Yeah.
But yeah, usually you can tell. And then you were telling me that you kind of do the same thing that I do. Is sometimes you'll send it back and go, "There's too much latency in this. I don't know if you need a different one or there's something in between them
These
that I don't know
days,
about."
I would say most of the time they've solved the problem with EVFs.
It's gotten better, definitely.
Yeah. They're generally about a frame and a half, which is fine.
Yeah.
So the Sony Venice, the Panavision camera, the DXL, all those cameras now have such tight latency or almost zero lag in the EVF. When you go to the onboard monitor, which in spite of my rambling on about operating through an EVF, there are going to be times when you have to operate through a monitor. You have no choice, handheld, for shooting from the hip or whatever the case may be. So when you're operating off of the onboard monitor, in prep, I will do exactly what I just described.
Mm-hmm.
I will measure the latency on the onboard monitor. Sometimes you can turn things off that are enhancing or changing the color science, like a LUT. You can turn those things off. That can sometimes there's a direct pass on some monitors that bypasses all the electronics, which will shorten the latency. I always check.
Yeah.
My livelihood is depending on that thing.
Of course.
This is how I feed my family, for God's sake.
The thing that I would say, because I'm not as technical as you are, what I'll do is I'll do my little test, and then if it's too much of a lag, I'll just look at the assistant and go, we got to get a tech in here and figure out why there's a lag. Like, I don't know why there's a lag, but someone's got to figure this out because it's been better.
Yeah, I find it's easier to measure it and say, hey, there's a
2 frames.
There's a 2-frame lag here. We got to do better than this.
Better than that, yeah.
So then the first thing we do is we'll probably go measure another one that's maybe sitting on the B camera.
Yep.
And then maybe bring a tech in, seeing if there's any LUT being processed that's going up to me, or maybe plugging it in a different spot, a different port, will make it go away or get it better.
Yep.
So you work on that. You work on that in prep.
You just start cutting out. What else do you do in prep as far as getting ready for a show? Both, by the way, in the prep house and maybe before reading the scripts, getting ready, looking at lookbooks, et cetera, et cetera.
That's a big question. So in terms of the script, I always say that I read the script twice. I read the script when I'm either getting the job or just got the job, or I'm considering, maybe sometimes they don't give you the script if you haven't signed yet. But
right.
Whatever the case may be, I read it straight up, right out of the box. In my beginning relationship with the director and the DP and everything, I read the script. And now you understand a little bit about what's going on and, what type of story it is and where you're going. And then you have all those discussions in prep about the look and the kind of, camera language and all this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And then just before filming, usually the day before or 2 days before, I give the latest version of the script because it would have changed in those 3 weeks or 4 weeks. So I read the most updated version one time and I never read the script again. I'm sorry to have to admit this, but I just don't have time. And there's so many revisions and pages that come through in the course of making a movie. So that's my last chance to understand the entire arc, to understand the story, to see if there's anything that's really different. And now maybe on that read would be a really good time to talk to the key grip about, hey, that scene where so-and-so runs up 5 flights of stairs. What are we doing for that? Well, that's you, Peter. You're going to be chasing him up in Steadicam. Good to know.
Yeah,
so that stuff that's a good time to address those kinds of questions.
Sure.
And then, of course, when you make the movie, then every morning you read your sides or the miniaturized version of the pages that you're going to shoot that day. So that would be every single day. In terms of technical prep, there's the Steadicam prep, which is a different portion, and then there's my prep as an operator. So since this podcast is more about operating, I will just focus on that. So on the actual day of prep, what I would do is I would start with things like, for example, testing the heads, looking at the heads, making sure they're all good. 9 times out of 10, they're fine because the assistants would have already done that. Mm-hmm. The next thing, and probably the biggest task left, would be the latency. Mm-hmm. I just described that earlier about I'm going to measure the lag on the eyepiece and on the onboard monitor and eventually work my way to the monitor that they're going to give me to operate on a crane. So I'm going to be looking at that and finding ways to reduce latency to the very, very minimum. I'm going to be looking at the setup of the EVF or the eyepiece on the camera and figuring out my bracketry, where it's going to go, where it's not in the way of assistance equipment. What are the options? Coming up with options about where to place it. This kind of stuff should be done in prep and not on the day, because sometimes you're going to be able to, you don't have time, and you're just going to be able to turn to the assistant and say, give me the eyepiece on the right side of the camera, and they'll know exactly what to do. So we go through all the bracket setups. I would set up on the side of a camera, on a digital camera, usually on the operator's side, are a couple of smart buttons that generally don't get used. So I would set up those buttons to do several things for me. One, we mentioned earlier about having peaking on and off. It's sometimes even nice to have two buttons, one that puts on peaking at a higher level and one that puts on peaking at a lower level, but that's not always possible. So definitely peaking on a smart button that I can control that only affects the image going to the eyepiece. It affects nothing else. And then the other button on there, I often put what I call a gate check, a term left over from the film days, because in the old days when the camera would cut, the assistant would literally check inside the film gate with a lens, with a lens light, to make sure there's no debris or hair in there. So they call that checking the gate. So I call it a gate check. So not always, but sometimes if there's any question about, were we rolling? Am I sure? I didn't notice that we were rolling on that. I could hit that gate check button and see the last couple of seconds of the clip.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
You can set it up to either see the beginning, which usually would be the slate. But sometimes I'm a bit lost in terms of what take we're on. But I know what the last couple of seconds of the shot were because I just saw it. So I usually set it for like the last 2 seconds, 3 seconds, and you hit that button and you just see playback and I go, okay, that's that. We're good. So I do a gate check on that. I work out exposure tools. So there are going to be times when I may be left on my own. Maybe I'm operating on a condor or something. We don't have a condor, which is a big tall crane that you would go up in, way up in the sky. So you're not going to have any control via Wi-Fi to the digital imaging technician.
So they can't set the stop and whatnot.
Can't set the stop. So I need to be aware of what the EVF has for exposure controls and get comfortable. And they're different from manufacturer to manufacturer, so I got to refamiliarize myself with where I need to be. It's a backup thing. 90% of the time, exposure is going to be controlled by someone else smarter than me, but there are going to be times when I'm going to have to be on my own and need to fix this. Setting up I use a program called Cadridge. It's kind of like Artemis, but it's basically an iOS, or I guess they have it on Android as well, program that you can put on your phone. In my case, I use a fairly large iPad, and it allows me to duplicate field of view with all the different lenses that we would be using. So if it's a Panavision show, I would put in the Panavision DXL camera. It would say what lenses are you using. I would put in those particular lenses that we're using on this particular show. So this is
viewfinder that you use on set. Viewfinder to show the director and the DP.
Again, in the analog days, we would have what's called a director's finder, which is basically a pistol grip with a lens mount. And you just stick your lens on the pistol grip and optically look through the lens and use that to set up your shot. The problem with that is you're the only one that sees it. And I know from experience that if I hand a director's finder, which is the optical finder, to a director, they're going to see something completely different than what I saw.
Also, we're both tall guys.
We're both tall guys.
Not everybody's holding it.
But even if they measure it, creatively, they're looking for different things. And the same thing is true of many DPs. If I give them, hey, let's say it's Jeff. Hey, Jeff, just look through. Is this what you're thinking? And he'll look through. And then when we set up the shot, he'll go, oh, you see out that window? I go, yeah, that window's been there all the time. He goes, but I didn't see out that window when I looked through So there's, well, I sure did.
Whereas iPad, everybody's looking at the exact
and I take a frame grab. I take a frame grab. We all agree on what the shot is.
The insurance plan.
And goes, oh, this is the shot. You love this, right? Yeah. Everyone's loving this. 27 mil right here at 16 inches off the ground. I hit frame grab. If there's any debate, you can look at my iPad.
What it actually needs, now that you're saying that, is it needs a recording feature where you hit it as well, and you can hear everybody going, yeah, that's the frame we like, so you can play it back to them.
An audio recording.
No, you actually said, listen.
Yeah.
But no, I know what you mean. No, but the main thing, it always used to crack me up. It's like I'd be crouching down or something, and I'd hand it over to the director, and they just wouldn't want to crouch down, so they'd look at it. And I'm thinking, well, you're not looking at what I'm. I mean, it'd be fine anyway. But yeah, it does help a lot.
This works better.
And it's funny that because because I don't find a lot of people who use cadrage or however it's pronounced because it's French. And I find it so much better than Artemis, only because Artemis does so many things. I find I'm constantly hitting a button, and I'm like, I don't know what happened. But cadrage only does like one thing.
It's simplified.
And it's simplified.
It's easier to set up in pre-production. Well, that's the thing. When you set up in pre-production, you want to double check through the camera that a 35 is a 35,
against the
a
framing
50 is a 50. I mean, it's usually good enough to do that, but sometimes there's a resizing that happens that the DP has or director has requested, like we talked about Fincher doing that. So I need to set the program on my cadrage to do exactly the same thing.
And also, there's the 8K and 6K at 4K and all that stuff.
All that shit.
Insane.
So you want to make sure it matches up in prep. The other good thing about shooting with that system, using an iPad or your phone or whatever, shooting with cadrage or Artemis, is that on a very complicated Steadicam shot, I will run all the second team rehearsals. They're still going to be building the Steadicam. They're not even done lighting, but I've got something that I can start working out with the ADs.
Working the extras.
And now we look at the playback, because it will record video if you want.
Yeah.
And I'll say, hey, when I come over here, it would be really cool if someone was walking through that spot right there. Okay, noted. Oh, and you know what? The shot ends right here now. So can we do something? Let's talk to the art department. Let's make this a little better. So now all of a sudden you've got something that you can use as a tool to involve all the other departments. They know exactly what you're seeing. So you spread the information around.
Agreed.
So cadrage setup is number 2 or 3 or wherever. Exposure tools, we talked about that. I would go through tools available to me on set to get the camera low. So if we have a Cartoni or a Lambda, whatever setup we have, I want to see how low we can get. I will probably take a measurement, so that way I'll know on the day. If we need to be at 8 inches, I can get that on a Lambda head and get there pretty easily. If we need to be 2 inches off the ground, well, that's a little more difficult. Now it's probably underslung. Maybe I'll use a crane for that, maybe a remote head. Or
I did a show in New Mexico with a dolly grip named Harlan, who was fantastic. Harlan Esprit, I think Esprit is, anyway, he was great. And it's the only time I've ever seen this, and I don't know why I've never seen it any other time. He, at the beginning of the show, took out his tape measure, and on the back of the metal tape measure, he put marks with every single thing of the high and low of what
That's
it would
smart.
do. So you'd go, we need to be here, and he'd turn it around and he'd look and go, okay, I can get you there on this, and this. And
it's funny you say that because sitting on my desk at home is a laminated yellow card that would normally be in my, I wear a little pouch.
And then you pull it
and
out.
on there is Hybrid, Dolly that we work with, Pee-wee, Dolly we work with, Fisher. And how low it goes in regular mode, how low it goes in low mode, how high it goes in each mode. It's all there. The numbers are all there. And now I can actually, if they say, oh, when he comes out, how much did we boom up to? Oh, we came to here. Seems like we need a riser. Oh, no, we're okay. No, I think we need a riser. You're going to be right up against the limit if you're on a riser.
Which you never want to be. But I thought that was amazing because you're always measuring it, and then it's just on the back of the tape. And
that's smart.
Never seen it other than that.
Yeah, that's smart.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's pretty much it. I would I'd put the camera on my shoulder, get it balanced for handheld work. So here I would go back to the eyepiece bracket that usually comes with the system because you want something really solid. So look at where you're going to hold the camera, how you're going to hold it. That's a personal preference. Every operator likes doing something different, but I don't like using handles. I like holding on to the matte box, but that's just me. So you may want to have a different kind of battery in the back to level out the balance. So again, handheld would be something you would be looking at. Also, I use a Easy Rig from time to time. I use it almost exclusively from what we call hip fire, which is shooting from hip. I love shooting from belt height for a lot of different reasons, usually stunts. Anything that's action always looks better at around belt height. It always does. Stunts look better, kicks are higher. So, and shooting from belt height is difficult for an operator handheld because now you're holding the thing, cradling it in your arm. I don't care what your biceps look like. After 4 or 5 takes, you're going to get pretty worn out. So the Easy Rig will help with that. It'll get me to where I need to be, and then I can either use the EVF or a monitor, whatever the case may be. So setting up the Easy Rig so that's balanced, the pick point is correct for balance, doing all that, that's also part of the whole thing. And then lastly, this is something new that I've been doing is I use a comm system. I've avoided it for years and years, as we made the transition to digital because I've never had to have a communication
I was going
system
to
with
ask
my
you,
crew.
this is one thing I ask everybody is, do you use it? How do you use it?
I use it to talk to just my team. If there's a B unit on the system, they're not on.
Yep.
I can break that off and put it on a different system.
Yep.
On my 8-camera system, it's the focus puller, the second AC, the dolly grip, and usually there will be a set sitting at the DIT tent that's turned off in case the DP wants to give me a note, hopefully not in the middle of a shot, do something different or watch out for this or whatever. I can get that note.
But the
discreetly.
key is it's not on all the time on the DP. And,
No. That you keep off because...
because I have a thing where I just can't have a headset on during the shot. And what I've said with people who want to be on it is I just say, look, the second the shot's over, I'll put it on if you need to tell me something. But when I'm doing the shot, I can't have someone in my ear. I can't be thinking someone's going to be in my ear. And I just need to be in the shot. And to me, it's always one of those things that if they have to tell me something, it's probably too late. Right?
You need therapy for that kind of stuff. But there are different ways. Like I also don't wear something that closes off the ear.
Oh, yeah.
Because I need to hear ambient of what's going wrong. So, or what's going well. Yeah. So I just have like I've just researched online and found something that works for me. An earpiece.
There's a ton of stuff. I mean, it's amazing what's happening with that now.
Yeah.
On a totally different level, but I was going to ask you this before, but sorry, is that the end of your...
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. I mean, basically what it comes down to is you're sort of like me, which is like, and you learn this pretty quickly, if you think, well, I don't need to do this now because I'll do this on day one or whatever, it never happens. Because you're hitting the ground running so fast, you never have the time to figure something out or whatever. The time to do this is in prep. And to do it in prep. So the key that I would say to anybody is everything you've got to figure it out in prep.
Keep a list like I just did. I cheated,
And then
in the
add
podcast,
to it every time
when you asked me, what do you do during prep? I asked you to pause, and I opened up my phone, and I went to my note. That tells me, because I didn't want to forget anything. So that's.
But the truth is you only prep every so often, so it's good to keep this list and keep adding to it. It's one of those things. It's like when I go on location, I have my location kit, which is I'm just talking about pots and pans for the apartment and stuff like that. And every time I add stuff to it that I realize I should bring with me. Yeah. But shooting for the edit. Do you think about the edit when you're shooting? Not that it's your job because you've got script supervisors, you've got a director, but do you consider that? Yeah,
I do all the time. I often will ask the director, what comes before this? What's the shot that precedes this in the movie? Yeah. And they'll look up and they go, a lot of them will note right away, oh, that's easy. It's going to be that great big crane shot I did outside and that where he wheels up and we're going to smash cut to there. Great. Good to know. But the reason I ask those kind of questions is that you want to make sure that what you're planning to do now is kind of a seamless cut from the outgoing shot. So if I have a shot of you, handsome face that you are, and then you're in the next scene, I don't think it makes sense to start on Dave's face because now you're cutting for. So maybe I start with your computer and you'll open your computer and I tip up to you, makes a better cut. Yeah. So you're thinking of the edit all the time. I do as well. I mean, I again, oftentimes you don't really need to be, but you ask me whether I think of the edit. Yeah. I do. And I also think of it too with position of other cameras. Mm-hmm. If a B camera is going there, first of all, are they on the right side of the screen direction of the line? Okay, hopefully they've already figured that out. And then what size are they getting? So if they're getting the same size as me, then it's very difficult to cut. It's very difficult to cut to go from something, let's say a waist shot to another waist shot. So either they should be tighter or looser, or I should be tighter. Yeah. And then that's something you pitch to the director or the DP and say, hey, maybe we should change the composition to make a better cut. So there's all kinds of reasons to think of the edit. Absolutely. Yeah. So I think we're probably gonna wrap up here. I could talk to you for 12 hours about this, but so the final question I'll ask you, and then I want you to tell because I didn't tell anybody about your newsletter, so I want you to mention your newsletter and also maybe re-mention your Instagram account just so everybody knows about it. I'm a brand new operator. I'm starting my career. What advice would you give me? Be humble. Be kind. Treat people well. Treat your crew really well. Involve the people around you who have more experience than you do. Rely on people. not every single day, but there are going to be times when I think a dolly grip would appreciate you turning to the dolly grip and saying, they want me to be here, but what do you think we should do here? Should we put track or should we put slider? And trust me, they will have done so many movies. They'll know, so involve the people around you, be kind, be collaborative, try and navigate the politics, which we talked about at the very beginning of this podcast, but try and navigate those minefields by finding the correct intervention that they require from a B camera operator. Are you there all the time? Are you actively part of it when they're blocking and we're looking? Are you right there, right beside me? Or do you lay back a little bit so you don't make the DP think that, this is going to be crazy. It's going to be a multi-camera show. So maybe you lay back and maybe you make yourself more apparent later when we start working out the mechanics. You might say, do you think there's something, maybe over here on, let's say, a 75 mil that can just pick them off and, oh, that's a really great idea. Let's go pitch that, let's go pitch that to the, Or sometimes come to me and, I think a thing that I do a lot is that if I make a change and I don't mention it because it's a subtle change, I don't mention it to the director or DP, again, that's not always possible, but sometimes. And the director goes, oh, that's great. You boomed up with them and then you went to the door and saw her coming in. That's great. I love that. I would say, oh, that was Brad's idea, but I'm glad you loved it. Thanks.
Yeah.
If they hated it,
yeah,
I would say, okay, sir, I'm not going to do that again. Do you get it?
No, absolutely.
You want to make the people feel around you protected so that they can give you ideas.
Yep.
And if you adopt them and it becomes, oh, it's a good thing, you say, hey.
But it's like we were talking about with actors. It's setting trust. It's setting the table for that future.
Absolutely.
And that just all adds
so
up to
as a younger camera operator, you want to be kind. You want to surround yourself with people who who obviously are going to be experienced. Yeah. And sometimes just listen. Keep your ears open.
Listen and learn is a lot of it, right? Yeah.
On the subject of listening, we didn't actually talk about this. Yeah. Sorry, I know you're kind of probably out of time.
No.
But I wear a Comtech, which I should explain what a Comtech is. It's a earpiece that's connected to a belt pack that broadcasts the dialogue. Yeah. So the director wears one, the script supervisor has one. Many people on set carry them around. I always wear a Comtech. Even if there's no dialogue, there is a Comtech on my body. Maybe I'm not wearing an earpiece. I have my own earpieces too. Yeah. I don't like the ones I get from them. I have my own.
Anybody who's wearing Comtech has to, because they give you those ones that sort of fit over your ear and fall off.
You just find one that works for you, and then get a couple of versions of them because they break. Yep. So, and the reason I'll have it on me is because sometimes in the midst of a shot that really has no dialogue, all of a sudden I see that he or she or something is doing something and saying something, and I don't want to miss it, particularly if I've got a lot going on and I'm on a Steadicam and she says something coming around that corner. I don't want to be misframed for that. So instead of stopping the show, saying, Peter needs a Comtech, and they got to bring it in, I just pull the thing out, stick it on my ear. I have it on me all the time. The main reason is when you're shooting dialogue and you're listening to the audio and you're listening to the script, it gives you a better perspective of the movie. Yeah. You understand. Now you're watching the movie, you're hearing the dialogue, you know your cues, when to do your push, you know exactly. So many actors don't realize it, but there's so many clues you get just by hearing things. Sure. Sometimes a director will come over to the actor and say, hey, you know what? When you jump up and say, I'm going to kill you, do that after this line. No one bothered to tell me.
You just heard it.
But I just overheard it. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't eavesdropping, but I was kind of, because he's wearing a mic and it's on an open mic, and I heard it. Note for Peter. Peter's processed the note. He's going to be ready. Yeah. Also, something I've noticed is that many actors will take a breath before bolting out of a chair. Like there's audio cues that happen all the time that help you. You will be a better operator if you hear everything that's going on.
By the way, going back to what we were talking about before is, and I've done this before, is like you'll have your Comtech on in between scenes and an actor will be talking. You'll reach over and be like, hey, I think your microphone's on, just to be aware, you know? And it's one of those things where they're like, oh my God. And then it's another thing where, oh, this operator's watching out for me. So that's one of those ancillary things. I've done that more than once, actually, where
sometimes they get on their phone, they're with their wife,
they're talking to their agent or whatever.
Yeah,
like,
and I'm like,
everybody
hey,
can hear you.
you're still mic'd.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Those are all fantastic. I mean, there's so many, but those are all great things for. Again, part of the reason I started all this was because I just want to put out there all the things I wish I knew when I was starting.
Yeah,
Nobody
I know.
told me, and I had to learn. I'm still learning. One thing I want to ask you about is you are a member of the SOC, the Society of Camera Operators. That's actually where you and I met. We taught a course there that you were teaching, actually, and called me in and said, can you come in and help out with this? And then I did another one, and I said, can you help me out with this? Just tell me about the SOC, and should someone become a member of the SOC, and what do they get for it?
Super glad you asked that. I think that for anyone listening that imagines themselves at one point that they might be a camera operator, whether they are one now or they want to become a camera operator, or they're just interested in learning about it, the SOC is basically a society of camera operators. We exchange information. We have workshops. There's a magazine, which I think now is fully digital, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a magazine that comes out digitally, which has stories and equipment reviews and stuff like that. There's of course, a black tie event once a year to celebrate the industry and to celebrate not just camera operators, but those that work with us, like the focus pullers and dolly grips get celebrated at this thing. So, and I think it's really important to be part of the community. I think, to join, there's levels. There's different levels. I think there's like a full membership, which
There's
is
like
one
an
thing.
associate level
and then
too,
there's an
which is-
associate. And there's also, I think, an educational membership. And it's basically to get people involved in the organization, to start looking at the workshops. And the most important thing in this business is contacts. It is how you get jobs.
That's exactly
is it how you
right.
move ahead in life? It's contacts and being part of the community, going to their mixers, going to their workshops. You meet other operators. You meet people, and all those people help you in the end, moving your career forward and getting jobs.
Absolutely.
Who should we get for a B camera operator tomorrow?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. Oh, but I just saw Dave.
Yeah.
I just saw him yesterday at that thing. He's not working. Call him. I kid you not. That's how it works.
It does. There's no question. It's about being in people's minds.
Exactly.
And the other thing I'll add to that, which is phenomenal, and I don't think most people know about it, is there were all those videos that are up there, like during COVID specifically, but since then, which were like how to work with a dolly grip and how to use a fluid head and how to
The Secret
set up
Life of
concepts
Fluid Heads, the one that Jeff Haley
they're
did.
Just
I love
this,
that one.
This incredible trove of information from great operators
Yeah.
explaining how to do action, and then on top of it, their classes, crane classes, and you name
So
it.
join the SOC.
Yeah,
At some level, if you're serious and considering about the world of camera operating, this is only one of two organizations in the world that focus. The other one is in Great Britain, but they also do a wonderful job. So get involved.
Totally agreed. SOC.org.
SOC.org.
What's your website, and tell me what tell us what it is.
So, there's stuff on my Instagram, peter.rosenfeld. I put stuff on there sometimes, little tricks and stuff. And, we talked about how to measure latency.
Yep.
I think that's on there.
I'm going to look as soon as I'm done here.
It's not always about that. Sometimes I put motorcycling crap on there as well, too. But that's there.
Yeah.
And then I have a website, and which is basically just to distribute a newsletter. It's peterrosenfeld.com. And the stuff that, if you sign up for the newsletter, the stuff you're going to get would be things like, I don't know, what just went out like 2 weeks ago, I think was something about on Suicide Squad, which was my last movie that I did on film. I sort of talked about that experience, about how, me saying goodbye to film. And trust me, I was actually kind of happy to say goodbye to film. So it's those kind of experiences, it's just like a day in the life of.
But you said also sometimes it's tips and
tips. Yeah, there's tips and
yeah.
tricks on there too. Yeah,
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. I actually just found out about it. I signed up for it, and I'm hoping to become a better operator as a result.
I don't know about that, but you may be entertained for
No, that's great.
2
well,
minutes.
Peter, this was fantastic. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for all everything you put into this. And it's just great to sit and talk with you.
I love it, and you're doing such a great job with this. Thank you very much. Congratulations with everything.
How great was that? Just amazing. I had such a great time talking to Peter. He has so much to offer and such insight into the art of operating. It's incredible. Make sure to check out his newsletter and Instagram, and of course our site and Instagram at theop.io. That's it for now. We'll see you in a couple of weeks, and thanks for listening.